I'd just like to start with a few thank yous, if I can. Firstly, thank you to the John Oldacre Foundation for sponsoring my study. And also to the Pedigree Welsh Pig Society and to Slow Food International, both for financial assistance and in-kind support. To family, friends, and to the staff that plugged an Illtud-shaped gap in production back at home. And mostly to my partner, Liesl, who she supported, but she was patient, because every time I came back, I had a new crazy idea that I wanted to implement in the business. Lastly, thanks to Nuffield. Thanks for giving me this opportunity, giving me a chance, and for welcoming me into the Nuffield family. So as a little background, although I trained as a photographer, I come from a long-standing family, farming family. We farmed in the Verdant Gwendraeth Valley for well over 300 years, since parish records exist. It's a very small holding in terms of modern industrial farming, only 167 acres. And my uncle was a dairy farmer until the late 90s. My partner Liesl and I moved there in 2004. We were looking for a project to diversify that farm business. And deriving from that family tradition of producing livestock for our own table and processing for our own table, we thought to diversify into a meat business. In 2011, we established Charcutier Ltd, clearing our home kitchen and turning the home kitchen into our processing space. We took out everything personal and put a butcher's block in the middle of the kitchen and started producing very traditional products for farmers' markets and utilizing our own stock from the farm. The business grew, and we were able to start having a few contract breeders, and we invested heavily in converting our old milking parlor into a state-of-the-art meat processing facility. And we've since grown, and we supply food halls such as Fortnum & Mason, and a few years ago we were recognized by Heston Blumenthal as one of his young British artisans. This last year has been a particularly successful one for us, winning the BBC Radio 4 Food and Farming Awards for Best Food Producer, and establishing a stall at the historic and iconic market at Borough Market in London. So why did I apply for a Nuffield? In addition to growing the business, I was working as a project manager for the Pedigree Welsh Pig Society. And I'd taken the view that rather than run the society as you would a more traditional breed society, I wanted to draw from the commercial industry and learn the lessons and utilize those. So we worked with Harper Adams University on a field trial, comparing our Pedigree Welsh herd with another native breed and the hybrid herd they had at Harper. We took hair follicle samples from those pigs, and with IBAs, produced a DNA mapping of the Pedigree Welsh pig breed. And that working title that I had when I applied for my Nuffield was native pig breeds and value-added products. I wanted to specifically look at other breed societies and how they utilized their genetics, retained their genetics, and commercialized those genetics. So I traveled to China, Brazil, the USA 3 times, Ireland, France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, Italy, and Hungary. Things changed quite a bit when I was on an abattoir visit in the north of England. I was there with an auditor, and I just happened to ask the abattoir owner, the blood that was being collected, what were they doing with the blood? Quick calculation, and I worked out that the blood that he was disposing of at a cost of £400 a week would produce the equivalent of £30,000 worth of retail black pudding a week. It really made me question whether my focus of my study was really on the right thing. So I wanted to look considerably more at those niches, the ways of making money from waste, utilizing blood, skin, fat, and bone, and looking at the far reaches of value adding. I also wanted to look further, look wider, and understand a bit more about our food industry, understand global food production and the ethics of producing food. This image is taken in the wholesale fruit market in Sao Paulo in Brazil. This was food that was on the street just rotting away. The majority of the food was actually being recycled and given to the slums, the favelas in the region around. But in the global north, we waste around 30 to 40% of the food produced. And it's not necessarily our responsibility as farmers to tackle wholly this problem, but we're part of that problem. What we find as a business processing food with connection to the public is that the divide between farmers is growing much, much greater. But it's not just because people don't understand how their food is grown and reared. People don't also know how to cook. There's a huge trend in retailing now of not producing real food or ingredients, but switching to prepared foods and convenience foods. Education is the absolute key to this. Jonty touched on true cost earlier on. The big lesson for me came from soya production. In 2011, I studied at Iowa State University at their meat lab. And during that time, there was this huge reduction in the shelf life of pork products, and it had come specifically from the feeding of waste husks, soya husks, from bioethanol production to pigs. It was affecting having an effect on the fatty acids of the pig, making a much lower quality product, harder to process, and reducing that shelf life and creating rancidity. When I returned to the farm in 2011, we changed our system. We stopped feeding soya to our pigs. We saw a dramatic change in how our fatty acids were being produced in our animals. We've since done some studies looking at the effect of feed on fatty acids and how that affects our final product. Unable to attend a GFP, I decided to travel to Brazil on the Nuffield tour. And part of that for me was to understand the effect that soya is having in Brazil. Lands in the middle of Brazil that had been deforested in the 70s and 80s for livestock production are now being converted to soya, pushing the livestock production further north into the Amazon and causing huge amounts of deforestation. Speaking with farmers as we moved through the country, we could see the effect of climate change and on changing weather patterns on their production. A food activist and chef in the States, Alice Waters, told me earlier this year, eating is a political act. We don't necessarily know the impact of our purchasing choices in the supermarket, in the shop, and we rarely consider that hidden cost, that true cost that affects government, our health service, and even the planet's ability to produce food for the future. 2050 is a key driver in most of our reports that we've heard from, but we need to consider much further than that. We may be able to produce food to 2050, but we need to think of the future post for 2050. Nuffield moments. Nuffield to me was a transformative experience. It gave me life experience, immense personal development, and it gave me those Nuffield moments. They changed my life. They changed how I think, and they'll completely dictate my future career. I had the opportunity to do all kinds of things. I made blood sausage with a Navajo. I visited a spaceport, learned about how we produce food for space and how we will produce food for planet colonization. I went to farms so large that I drove for 20 minutes and I was still in the same field. I had lunch with one of the chief designers at Apple at the HQ in Palo Alto. I ate insects, intestines, brain foams, donkey sausage, tripe soup, and dog. Nuffield is about saying yes to things. And it was about pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. So it brings me to that most transformative of experiences that I had during my study. It was in October 2015 at the first symposium for cultured meat in Maastricht. Cellular agriculture is an umbrella term for cultured products. So it can include meat, milk, eggs, leather, blood, even things like rhino horn. The sheer effect of going to the conference was that I had to cancel all my meetings for the following day. I sat in the university town in the square of Leuven in Belgium, contemplating what I'd just processed over the past few days about the opportunities that cellular agriculture had to produce protein for the future. I'd never really experienced that pressure of thinking in the same way. And sitting there in the square, I had 5 nosebleeds. It even made me question the validity of eating meat. And for somebody who's come from a family that's had meat as a dominant thing on the table and running a meat processing business, that's a huge, huge leap. So cellular agriculture, what is this technology? Well, it's not new. The production of eggs and milk draws from the fermentation technology that you'd have in the brewing industry. We already have businesses that produce this type of product. Corn, a microprotein that's fermented, is a form of cellular agriculture. Cultured meat draws from biomedicine and draws from tissue engineering. It's technology that's existed for the last 70 years. To produce cultured meat, we take a donor cell from an animal, we grow it on a medium, feed it on nutrients, and then further process that product, that ingredient, to make products, meat products, that are exactly chemically the same. Animals are needed in this process. This is not a replacement for agriculture. This is an opportunity for agriculture. But it's an opportunity for agriculture if we accept it, and if we engage with it and embrace it and lead on it and not dismiss it. So my final slide. This is an open invite to a launch event of a group called Cultivate. Earlier this year, 5 of us had a strange phone call from one of the chief advisors at Number 10, asking if we'd contribute to a draft policy on alternative proteins in the UK. The 5 of us have come together and set up a group, and we have our first meeting in Bath in a couple of weeks' time. And the idea is to have voices from all across the industry, and to hope that we can actually provide some form of discussion for a future for this kind of technology in the UK. I hope to see a few of you there. Thank you.